Today, I'm going to tackle a topic that I have been asked about a great deal. I have actually worked with quite a few people around the globe with this particular topic. So, we're going to take a quick look at the spiritual message behind high blood pressure. Now, before I get into this, please go to a doctor if you have high blood pressure or you think you do. Please go to a doctor. Please check that out. There are so many higher risk factors when you do have high blood pressure, higher risk for stroke, higher risk for heart attacks, and other things. So please make sure you're getting a proper diagnosis. Now that I've got that out of the way, let's talk about high blood pressure. So if this is your first time watching one of my videos, I'm Tara Meyer-Robson. I'm a medical intuitive, and I created two methodologies to help people pinpoint the underlying reasons for negative patterns, pain, and disease. And I'm known for being able to translate the message behind anybody's pain or disease in about a minute, which I know sounds like a bold claim, but I do it all the time. So let's talk about high blood pressure. So, from my perspective, first thing we need to take a look at is what's the spiritual meaning of blood? And what I always look at when I'm thinking about it is what does blood do for us in our body? So, blood carries blood cells. One of the main things they do is they carry essentially nourishment around our body. When I'm talking about blood, I'm really talking about the red blood cells because that tends to be the thing we're sort of taking a look at here. And so the red blood cells tend to be carrying all those things around you that you need, vitamins and oxygen and all these things being carried throughout your body, going to all the parts of your body so that you are fully nourished and can function properly. That's sort of a easy and kind of novice way of explaining it, but generally speaking, that's what we're looking at. Obviously, our white blood cells, what do? Our white blood cells are basically part of our immune system, and they help us when we are exposed to pathogens and other things like bacteria and viruses and things like that, so that we can actually fight them off. So when I take a look at something like high blood pressure, it's always something to do with our emotions and oftentimes has to do with kind of what's going on around us. Why do I say that? Whenever I look at the immune system or any aspect of the immune system, what it represents for me is something I call a station one issue, which is issues with the groups in our lives and how we are supported or not supported, protected or not protected in the groups in our lives, oftentimes starting in childhood. So if you've grown up in a way where your childhood was very difficult and you were not protected by the group, and when we think about, the reason for groups survival wise was, in a group, in a tribe, was more protected than if you got ostracized from the group. You were now against the elements, you're all by yourself. So that's what I think of sort of metaphorically when I look at our immune system. So when I look at like things like our white blood cells, that's what I look at. When I look at things like, again, our red blood cells or anything that has to do with our cardiovascular system, that is what I call a station four issue. Now, a station four issue has to do with our emotional connection to life. And so a lot of times we can have programmed into our mind things that are negative or difficult about our ability to express and fully feel emotions in our lives. Now, a lot of times this will come from a very long-standing or and certainly becomes a very unconscious thing. So if you had parents who said that it wasn't okay for women to express anger or men to cry, which was very common for a very long period of time. And from working with people around the world, there were a lot of reasons. Like if you were raised in an abusive household, oftentimes you weren't allowed to speak up and say when things were upsetting you or say when you were afraid. You're called a coward and other things, right? So those kinds of things end up over time becoming something that is an unconscious belief for us around our ability to fully feel and express emotions in our lives. Essentially, it boils down to this. A lot of times we're taught that our emotions are either good or bad, right? We're taught that like anger is bad and happiness or joy is good. And it's not really a good or bad for me. What it is all of our emotions are human, right? We're humans, we're having a human experience. And we wouldn't have these emotions if they weren't there to teach us something, tell us something, and allow us to more fully experience life. So, anger can be a really great thing when we use anger to move ourselves forward or out of situations where we realize we're actually getting angry. Oftentimes, we get angry because the situation is no longer tenable or it's not a positive situation for us. So, when we look at it that way and we express it in positive ways and we use it as a catalyst forward, It's actually a great emotion. There's nothing really wrong with it. So I give you all of that information about emotions to explain and lead into why that sometimes leads to high blood pressure. So when I work with people with high blood pressure, I mean, right off the bat, guys, why would we be having increased pressure? And oftentimes, people that have high blood pressure will literally say that I'm feeling so much increased pressure. I'm feeling under pressure, right? A lot of times when I'm dealing with people with high blood pressure, they are in high pressure situations or difficult points in their life. So sometimes it's things like problems in the family, partner problems, divorce, certainly job problems cause an enormous amount of stress, financial problems. And what happens is if you've not been fully allowed to find ways, positive ways to get those emotions out, then they just keep building up. So the image I always get when I'm working with somebody with high blood pressure is like a kettle and the pressure is just starting to, and the steam finally like goes out, except there's nowhere for the steam to go. So maybe more correctly, I should say one of those, my grandma had one of these, one of those old fashioned coffee pots that did the little percolator thing on the top and they just percolate and there's nowhere to go. If we think about it that way, the pressure is sort of percolating and sort of, or like pressure cooker. My mom had a pressure cooker when I was a kid and you had to like release the pressure and it could just go popping off, which I remember it doing once if you didn't release it correctly. And I think that's a good analogy to what's going on with high blood pressure. If we aren't able to uncap it and release some of the pressure correctly, or even release it at all in positive ways that feel good, or use it in ways that we're able to move forward in positive ways, that buildup can create internalized stress that creates high blood pressure. Now, again, check with your doctor, always check with your doctor. But in order to deal with high blood pressure, one of the things I really, really recommend that you do is start writing down, just literally write down on a piece of paper, where do I feel pressure in my life right now? What is going on? Where am I feeling pressure? Write those things down. Then look at what emotions am I feeling around that pressure? What's going on with that? Now, a lot of times you might find that you're having different feelings than you even realized. So you may be feeling anger towards a boss that's really toxic and blocking your career or something, things like that, right? You might actually find that you're actually feeling sadness over something going on in your life. A sadness, again, you might see it even, I usually see grief show up in different ways, but grief could show up as high blood pressure. You could be feeling a lot of sadness over unexpressed grief. Those kinds of things can show up. So, what I would suggest that you do is find healthy ways to be able to express the emotions that you identify that you're feeling. So, if you are feeling anger, find some healthy ways to get it out of your system. So, something like going to a kickboxing class, punching pillows. I've got a little daughter. My daughter's 8 now. And one of the things we taught her along the way is when she's feeling really angry, that's completely fine. But we have to find good ways, like positive ways, I should say, to be able to express it and kind of like get it out. And then we can figure out what's under the anger. What do we need to solve here? Right. I think that's true for everyone. So we teach her like she can go punch pillows if she wants to. She's allowed to go down and lock and like not lock, but close herself in the car in the garage and scream at the top of her lungs if that'll make her feel better because she just needs to get it out. Whatever, like those kinds of things can be really positive ways to get the anger out. If you're dealing with sadness, sometimes people have a really hard time accessing sadness because sometimes they had families where they were not allowed to cry no matter what was happening, no matter how horrible it was and how much they deserved to be afraid and cry or sad and cry. But it was like, don't cry, it's weak, or don't cry, whatever it is, horrible. And that will get those emotions very much stuck in you. So if you find that that's true for you and you aren't able to get the sadness out, I do recommend going and finding some sad thing, a sad movie, a sad show, a sad book if you like to read, a sad podcast. I don't think they've got to have some out there, those kinds of things, and dedicate that period of time to literally crying out whatever you need to cry out with whatever the circumstance is that's putting you under so much pressure. Okay. It's about, if you can imagine, again, almost that like pressure cooker, it's about releasing those emotions and knowing that they're healthy. The final thing I'd like to suggest for you to do after you get some of those emotions out is to take a look at it and now say, okay, I've gotten the anger, I've gotten the sadness, I've gotten the fear, I've gotten whatever it is needed to be expressed out of me. What is my best path forward? What's the next right decision? What is this trying to tell me so that I can move forward in a way that both releases pressure on me and allows me to be freer and more wholly myself and to be able to actually move forward in a positive way. So again, there's other ways to sort of additionally, mindfulness is really important if you're dealing with high blood pressure. So again, just being meditation, but it can be really hard if you're constantly thinking about whatever's going on. Going and taking walks in nature, just breathing and trying to breathe in gently, but take that next right action to be able to release the pressure. So I hope that this was enormously helpful to you. And I will probably tackle the spiritual meaning of low blood pressure because it's actually a different aspect. And I will say, so when I talked at the beginning about blood being nourishment, part of the ways we nourish ourselves in our lives is by accepting emotions into our lives. So part of that nourishment is accepting love, accepting joy, accepting happiness, accepting just those good feelings, and self-love as well. So when we are feeling that kind of pressure and we are blocking that from coming to ourselves, that can absolutely create this sort of pressure cooker thing as well. Okay. So if this has been super helpful for you, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps me a ton. Please let me know in the comments if you have any other aspects or anything you're going through in terms of cardiovascular issues. I love to tackle a lot of those. There's a lot of times, well, your body oftentimes is telling you exactly what's going off in your mind, body, and life with what's showing up in your life. So, or in your body. So I'm happy to take a look at those. I love to see those, and I will try to do a video response to you right here as well. And if you'd like to go deeper and actually really understand the underlying message of anything that you're dealing with, I created my signature program, Body Language, Deciphering Your Body's Clues So You Can Heal. And that program basically takes everything out of my head and puts it out into a program for you and allows you to go through and go piece by piece and actually create a message from your body that tells you exactly what's off in your mind, body, and life. And then I show you how to create a personalized healing plan that'll work just for you to be able to get to these unconscious beliefs, to be able to release these old difficulties, old traumas that may be at the root, sort of the root cause of what's showing up, and be able to move forward in alignment with your best life. If you're interested in that, you can take a look. I've got it in the links underneath. And until next time, please stay happy and healthy and in the flow with all good things in your life. See you next time.